Screen didn't work last time without not the part over here, basically.
Really, you can't do it. You just need Wi-Fi in that app.
And I think we tried last time.
I tried, it didn't work. Chromecast.
Everybody can look up the verse. So what is it? Verse 32 already, yeah? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Evam Triloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Badaryashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina Evam Triloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Badaryashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina Evam Triloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Badaryashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina
Evam Tiloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Vadaryashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina
Evam Tiloka Guruna
Evam Tiloka Guruna
Sandishta Shadayonina
Sandishta Sabdayonina
Vadaryashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina Evam Triloka Guruna
Evam Triloka Guruna
Sandishta Shabdayonina
Sandishta Shabdayonina
Vadaryashramam Asadya
Badaryashramam Asadya
Harim Ije Samadhina
Harim Ije Samadhina Evam Triloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Badarashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina Mataji. Evam Triloka Guruna Sandishta Shabdayonina Badarashramam Asadya Harim Ije Samadhina Evam thus Triloka three worlds Guruna by the spiritual master Sandishta being perfectly taught Shabdayonina by one who is the source of all Vedic knowledge Badarashramam in the pilgrimage site of Badarikashram Asadya reaching Harim unto the Lord Ije satisfied Samadhina by trance. Translation Sukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge and the spiritual master of the three worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Badarikashrama and engaged himself there in a trance to satisfy the Lord. Purport, this is a long purport. So meaningful. Lord Sri Krishna is factually the spiritual master of the three worlds, and he is the original source of all Vedic knowledge, as we hear in Bhagavad Gita, right? Vedaista sarvaya ahamiva vidya, Vedanta vid vedakrit eva chaham. It is very difficult, however, to understand the personal feature of the Absolute Truth, even from the Vedas. His personal instructions are needed in order to understand the personality of Godhead as the Supreme Absolute Truth. Bhagavad Gita is the evidence of such transcendental knowledge in gist. One cannot know the Supreme Lord unless one is graced by the Lord himself. Lord Krishna exhibited this specific mercy toward Arjuna and Uddhava while he was in the material world. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksurimilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Sunivadi Paschachari Satarane Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaura Tvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopi Ka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Okay, thank you for coming, and if anybody's out there, thank you. Prabhupada gave great stress on attending the Bhagavatam class. One time in LA he was leaving, and Prabhupada liked to be very early for flights. And they went, and he said, no, I have to go and give a class. And they were saying but he gave a very short class, so he just said, I'm leaving now, and everybody should come to Bhagavatam class every day. Because he knew when he was gone, even when he was there, the attendance went gradually down, after he was there for a long time. First couple of days at temple room was overflowing, and then gradually it was just the regulars. Anyway, Krishna is the source of all the Vedic knowledge, and he says that in the Bhagavad Gita. It's interesting how people are, like we had some in Bali where they're Hindus, and they wanted us to give evidence only from Shruti, not from Bhagavad Gita. But Bhagavad Gita is Shruti, it's Krishna. But they don't understand that. They say they accept Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata and everything, but so Krishna is the source of everything. The person is person Krishna. So whatever he speaks is absolute Vedic knowledge. And Bhagavad Gita is evidence of all this transcendental knowledge. And we can't know Krishna unless we get the mercy, and we get the mercy from the spiritual master. Chya prasada bhagavad prasado. Chya prasada nagati katopi. Krishna is pleased when he sees someone accepting the spiritual master and surrendering. Next paragraph. Undoubtedly, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight, and yet to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. The Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate knowledge which he had not spoken even in the Bhagavad Gita. Persons who are attached to the words of the Vedas may also know from this verse that the Lord is the source of all Vedic knowledge. One who is unable to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by going through the pages of the Vedas may take shelter of one of the Lord's devotees, such as Uddhava, in order to advance further in knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Brahma Samhita says it is very difficult to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the Vedas, but he is easily understood from a pure devotee like Uddhava. Taking mercy on the great sages who lived at Badarikashrama, the Lord authorized Uddhava to speak on his behalf. Unless one has such authorization, one cannot understand nor preach the devotional service of the Lord. So Brahma says, Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto, that it's very difficult to understand from the Vedas, but by bhakti yoga it's easy, because Krishna is in the heart and he reveals the knowledge. One who's trying to find it when he doesn't even know what it is. He can't find it in the Vedas. And Lord Chaitanya is very little mentioned in the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and Krishna's Goloka pastimes are beyond the Vedas practically. Vedas are mostly Triguna Vishaya Veda. They're dealing mostly with the three modes of nature. But they're meant to get us out. So Krishna chose Uddhava and to give more, like in the Uddhava Gita we have like detailed instructions about deity worship and things that are not detailed in the Bhagavad Gita that he spoke to Arjuna in a big rush on the battlefield. Didn't have a lot of time. With Uddhava, he could take as much time as he wanted because he was going to leave by his own free will. So we got so many details and so many stories to illustrate the points. Very important. I remember that when I first read Nectar Devotion, it was practically the only book we had, and there was so many references to the 11th canto, and I kept thinking, well, I'm going to read that, you know. It was a long time before we got that chance. But now we have it, and we have commentaries, you know, from the Acharyas, translated also. Very, very important. The Uddhava Gita. While present on this earth, the Lord executed many uncommon activities, even traveling in space to bring down the Parijata from heaven and recovering the son of his teacher, Sandipani Muni, from the region of death. That was quite a miraculous one. What to speak of bringing back all the sons of Devaki that got killed by Kamsa. And they were still babies. It was after a long time. Uddhava was certainly informed of the conditions of life on other planets, and all the sages were anxious to know about it, just as we are anxious to know about the planets in space. Uddhava was particularly deputed to carry a message to Badarik Ashram, not only to the sages of that place of pilgrimage, but also to the Narayan deities. Such a message must have been more confidential than the knowledge described in the pages of the Vedas. Krishna told Uddhava, I went everywhere on the earth, and I've done all these things, but I didn't get a chance to go to Badarik Ashram and Benedict the sages there, so you should go. Because Uddhava wanted to leave with Krishna and go back to Godhead with him, but Krishna said, no, you have to stay. Gave him this duty. And that it's like the instructions are for all of us. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you declare it boldly, and my devotee will never perish. So that's not just for Arjuna, that's for everybody. Some people say, well, Hindu, you shouldn't preach or this and that, but Krishna said, you declare it boldly, you tell them. That's for all of us. That's for everyone. And that's what Lord Chaitanya said. Well, every man and woman in the world should help me distribute all these fruits of love of Godhead. Because there's so much. So this is very confidential knowledge, but it's given in the Bhagavatam and it's given by the Acharyas. The Lord is undoubtedly the source of all knowledge, and the messages dispatched through Uddhava to Narayan and other sages were also part of the Vedic knowledge, and they were more confidential and could be sent or understood only through such a pure devotee as Uddhava. Since such confidential knowledge was known only to the Lord and Uddhava, it is said that Uddhava was as good as the Lord himself. Saksadari Traina Samasta Shastra. Every living entity can, like Uddhava, also become a confidential messenger on the same level as the Lord, provided he becomes confidential himself by dint of loving service. Such confidential knowledge is entrusted, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, only to the pure devotees like Uddhava and Arjuna, and one has to learn the mystery through them, not otherwise. One cannot understand Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam without the help of such confidential devotees of the Lord, which for us is what? Huh?
Sorry, what was the question?
For us, where do we get that? Prabhupada's purports, right? He's the confidential servitor. He's coming down and he's presenting the Bhagavad Gita as it is, and the Bhagavatam. And therefore we can get it, and we can also become confidential messengers by distributing the Prabhupada's purports. We can literally distribute them in book form, and we can study them and explain them to people who, are interested. Otherwise, we could read the Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, wouldn't, like so many people do. But they don't know Krishna. They know the Bhagavad Gita by heart. They don't believe Krishna is a person and stuff. They're just academic. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that confidential knowledge must have concerned the mystery of his departure and the annihilation and dynasty after the end of his appearance in the mundane world for 100 years. Everyone must have been very anxious to know about the mystery of the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, and that message must have been explained by the Lord to Uddhava and dispatched to Badarika Ashram for the information of Naranarayan and other pure devotees of the Lord. Now, Naranarayan, that's Krishna and Arjuna. It's one of the incarnations. That's also very interesting. The guru of Narada Muni. That's why he chants Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. So today is the disappearance day of Narottam Das Thakur. Right? So what should we do? Should we sing some of his bhajans, or should we hear a little bit of his life, or both? Okay. His life is very fascinating. There's many books. The book by Mother Sitala Dasi is really nice. She studied for many years all the different biographies of Narottam, and she put it's very readable, especially for us, because she's, Native American and can speak English in our way. So he was born in a royal family, but in Bengal, Varnashram at the time, except Brahmins, everyone was Sudra. The Brahmins made a lot of trouble for, everybody. Because the demons from previous age took birth as Brahmins in Kali Yuga. But he was never interested in that. He was always interested. He was an extremely astounding child, Like every parents think their child is especially beautiful, but in the case of Narottam, the whole village, everybody could see it. And he was a brilliant student, and he learned everything very fast. And he just wanted to get away and, meet Lord Chaitanya. And he ran away, and the father's, police or whatever, they caught up. He convinced them that he was on a higher purpose and it's all right, and they let him go. And he walked all the way to Vrindavan. And Lord Chaitanya had predicted Narottam when he was traveling by that one lake, what was it, Padmavati Lake? And he was going, Narottam, Narottam, and nobody knew what he was talking about. And then he took bath in that lake, and then he told the lake, the demigod of the lake, that I've deposited my prema here, and when Narottam comes, you give it to him. So Narottam, in his travels, he took bath there, and when he came out, he had changed. His complexion changed even. He was very dark, but he was like golden and effulgent. Everybody could recognize. So then he carried on walking to Vrindavan, and it took him a long time because every village people, wanted him to stay. And he reminded him of Lord Chaitanya. So by the time he got there, Rupa, they were waiting for him, Rupa and Sanatan. And when is he going to come? And finally Sanatan left, then Rupa left, and then, before he got there, and he was really distressed. But they came to him, appeared to him, and said, take shelter of Jiva Goswami. And he was also told to get initiated by who? Lokanath or Lochan? Huh? Huh? Lokanath Goswami, yeah. And Lord Chaitanya had instructed him, but he didn't have any disciples, he didn't feel qualified. Narottam requested, and he said, no, who am I? You are such a great person, and just look at you, you don't need initiation. But Narottam was so determined that he would follow when he went out for his morning ablutions, because they would just go in the forest, and then he would clean up everything and carry the stool away, far away. And so Lokanath started thinking who's doing this, and he hid and he saw, so he understood, and so he initiated Lokanath. But he was studying under Jiva Goswami, and he and Srinivas became great friends together. And just going really quick, then they were sent to take all the books of the Goswamis to Bengal and Orissa under the instruction of Janavimata. They didn't want to leave Vrindavan. They were very attached, and everyone was very attached to them. Everyone loved them, but it was the order of the spiritual master, so they went. And then there's this whole story about the books being stolen. But Narottam ended up back in his hometown, very much honored. And he just preached like anything, and his preaching was so brilliant that all kinds of, big brahmanas were surrendering to him. Big Chakravartis and all these. And people that were famous, Smarta Brahmins and stuff, they were surrendering to Narottam and becoming. So the Brahmin society was very distressed because he's a Sudra by their calculation. And they said he's destroying the Vedic culture by initiating, Brahmanas. So they made a plan to defeat him. And they got a bunch of big ones. And there's so many stories you have to read because we don't have very much time to go all of them, how they were just converting not only big Brahmins, but thieves and rogues and, every kind of person. Anyone who heard him talk, they would surrender. And accept that bhakti is supreme. And so they made this plan to go with the big pundit and defeat him and show that he was, bogus. So two of his formerly big Brahmin disciples, one was Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and one other one, they heard about this scheme. So they went to the village that was the next village or something, where these people would camp out. And they talked to some merchants. So one of them dressed up, and he was sitting as a panwala, and another one was a pot maker or something. And so this party of these big Brahmins, they stopped there and they sent some of their students into the market. And they met this this pot maker and the panwala. And they were very surprised because they started speaking in Sanskrit, which is not normal. And then they started debating with them, and they just totally smashed all these. So they said, "Who are you anyway?" They said, "Oh, we're just, lowly servants of Narottam Das. Nobody's." And so they went back and they said, "We better not try this, because if he's just his disciples that are just a panwala, So they finally went to the king, and they got the Raj Guru of the king, and they agreed to go. And the Raj Guru immediately agreed. And, he said, "I've been wanting to meet Narottam." And so they got nearby, and then they said only the king and this Raj Guru would go. And they just went and surrendered to Narottam. And the interesting point is that we all know the story when that Digvijay Pandit was challenging, and he challenged Sanatan and Rupa, and they gave the chit, "I've been defeated." And then Jiva defeated him. So this was this Raj Guru. He had been defeated by Jiva. And he was so impressed by his preaching. So he wanted to meet Narottam, so when he got there, he just surrendered, and then that was the end of all that kind of harassment. So he just went on, and he made the first Gaur Purnima festival. By that time, his cousin was the king and sponsored everything, and it ended up with every Vaishnava in all of Bengal or all of India practically coming. But he just spent his time. He had the dream, our instruction, installed a lot of deities at that festival, and the Janavamata had guided him, and the names. And the one particular one was a Gauranga, and that was being kept by one rice merchant. So he went to get it, and it was in a big, rice bin. And they said, "You can't go there, no one can go there, this is a place full of snakes, poisonous snakes." And he just walked right in, all the snakes went out, and he came out with this deity of Lord Chaitanya, very beautiful. So they installed like 5 deities, and Lord Chaitanya had told him when he wanted to suicide before he got to Vrindavan, when he found out, everybody had already disappeared. "And I need you, we have, you are going to introduce all these special kinds of kirtan, and it's very important." So he had been practicing, and so many musicians, and they had the incredible kirtan, and it just went on, and then finally the whole Panchatattva and their associates, everybody appeared dancing with the devotees. And they went till late at night. So it was, the first Gaur Purnima festival. Then everybody left, and everybody's crying and separation. And Narottam, jump ahead, Like we know the song Jaya Nilo Premadana, he's crying separation. And he got more or less incapacitated, and he was just, singing these bhajans, and some rascal Smarta Brahmins were still criticizing, and they were, this Ganganarayan Chakravarti, one of his main disciples, he was very distressed. They were saying, just see your guru, because he is so offensive as a Sudra initiating Brahmanas. Now just look, he's just crying about his friends, and it's not remembering Brahman or something. And so he had built it, asked him to build a funeral pyre, and he was on top of it. And Ganganarayan told him, please, you have to, so he came down and started preaching again. And all these rascals surrendered and got initiated. Some were initiated by Ganganarayan and some were initiated by Narottam. Stayed for some time more. Then he had the most interesting disappearance that we never heard anything else like it. They were in the Ganga and everybody was pouring water on him, and he turned into milk. And the milk just started spreading, so they got pots and they gathered up as much as they could. And there's a dude samadhi there. And some of it, they put that milk and it made a samadhi. And there's some of the deities he was worshipping. Shalagram, I think Indraduna Maharaj has one of the shalagrams that he used to worship. Two of those deities now are in Vrindavan. Two different temples in Vrindavan, the Radha Krishna deities. So then his main contribution is all these bhajans, which are certified to be non-different than the Vedas. He wrote in the simple Bengali language, so everybody could benefit. Because the Brahmanas were all holding on, only in Sanskrit, and only Brahmanas can, and then everybody could only get the version of these so-called Brahmanas. So this is his main contribution, and Prabhupada was extremely fond of his bhajans. So I don't know if we're planning anything else today, but should sing a couple. We got all kinds of bhajan experts around here. All right, who'd like to sing one? You have a favorite? Huh? Name a few. Nitai Pada Kamala, and so many. Who will sing? Okay. Which one? Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. And you can look up, and there's a Narottam Vilas, his long, big books, so many details of his life. Everything he did was totally fascinating and inspirational. Nitai Pada Kamalam, okay? It's one of my favorites. And very important. Who sing? Okay, go for it. No, you have it on the board? Huh? Can anybody get it up there? Okay, and who will sing? If you're going to sing, let's get started. I'll get 15 minutes. Jaya Nila Premadana Achu
Hena Prabhu Kotha Gela
Nino Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakur
संग ना पाया बंदे
He who brought the treasure of divine love, who was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Advaita Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan, Raghunath Das, the Savior of the fallen? Where is my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. Narottam especially was feeling separation, like he was trying to get to Lord Chaitanya, he heard he'd left, trying to get to Rupa and Sanatan, they left just before he got there, and on and on and on. Then he so much attached to Srinivasa Acharya, but he hardly got to see him again. And then we have the other song, there was Raghunath, Kaviraj, his favorite, he was a disciple of Srinivas, and he was a favorite friend of Narottam, and then he disappeared also, and that's, he was crying in that other song, don't take him away, to Srinivas. But he went to visit Srinivas in Vrindavan, and then he left. So he was just always in separation. That's what these fools were criticizing, that he's just crying about all his friends. And it's not spiritual. All his friends were pure devotees and incarnations. Okay? Another one? Who said they would do Nitai Pada Kamala? Are you going to do it? Do we have time for one? Feeling separation is not a cheap thing, it's due to love, deep love and affection. So he is feeling separation from Lord Chaitanya and Rupa and Raghunath, who he never actually met. Okay? Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah, we changed it.
They're all great. Prabhupada sang this one many times. It's recorded. Give the microphone. Everyone can hear anyway, but.
patita pavana hetu tava avatara mosama patita prabhu na paive ara mosama patita prabhu na paive ara Mahaprabhu Nityananda Premananda Sute Mahaprabhu Nityananda Premananda Sute Kripa Bolokana Koro Ame Bada Doke Daya Koro Sitapati Advaita Gosai Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nitai Tava Kripa Bale Pai Chaitanya Nitai. Do we sing this verse? Do we sing that? Asaru Sanatana Rupa Raghunatha Asaru
Not the song of separation. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, please be merciful upon me. There is no one more merciful than you in the world of birth and death. Someone else has got a microphone. Quick.
Your incarnation is just to reclaim the conditioned fallen souls. But I assure you that you will not find a greater fallen soul than me. Therefore my claim is first. My dear Lord Nityananda, you are always joyful in spiritual bliss. Since you always appear very happy, I have come to you because I am most unhappy. If you kindly put your glance over me, then I may also become happy. My dear Advaita Prabhu, husband of Sita, you are so kind, please be merciful to me. If you are kind to me, naturally Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda will also be kind to me. O Sarupa Damodara, a personal secretary of Lord Chaitanya, O 6 Goswamis, O Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunatha Bhatta Goswami, Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, O Lokanath Goswami, my beloved spiritual master, Narottam Das also prays for your mercy. O Srinivasacharya, successor to the 6 Goswamis, please be merciful to me. Narottama Dasa always desires the company of Ramachandra Chakravarti.
Prabhupada even spoke in the last purport to that one. He just repeated everything. We sing every day, Shri Guru Charani Padma, that's also nice. Okay. Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. Gita ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Gaur Premanand. All glories to the Son. All glories to the Son. All glories to the Son.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Glory to
I should not use this harmonium.
Yeah. I think I started on the scale too.
Sorry?
I started on the low scale.
Oh.
Should've-
No, but this gets stuck. If this gets stuck or this gets stuck, it's very tough.
It sounds nice to me at least.
Which one?
The harmonium, it sounds
No,
nice.
this one, see?
It's not funking. It's not functioning properly.
Yeah,
right?
it's not. It just in between, it just gets stuck like this.
Hare Krishna.